I secretly added backdoors to my code. Then a $43 million breach ruined everything. As a software developer, have you ever quietly left a backdoor in your own code? I used to do it all the time. Every big project got one. Until about 3 months ago, when everything in my life unraveled because of a single line of code tucked away deep inside a banking application. Ever since, I've been stuck wondering whether I'm the bad guy in all this, or just someone who got burned by his own overconfidence. But before I dive into all that, let me say this. I've noticed the channel's been slowing down a bit lately. If you're here and you like these stories, hitting that subscribe button is the easiest way to show support. It's fast, it's free, and it really helps keep this community growing strong. Most folks assume backdoors are something only hackers or shady government types mess around with. But the truth is, plenty of everyday programmers like me sneak them in too. Sometimes it's for convenience, sometimes to help with debugging, and sometimes, honestly, because we just don't feel like doing things the long, proper way. It's one of those things nobody brings up at tech conferences, but everyone knows it happens. I never set out to be a security risk. I just kind of drifted into it. I was just a small-town kid from Ohio who caught a lucky break. A full scholarship to Carnegie Mellon to study computer science. I was the first in my whole family to even set foot on a college campus. My parents were so proud they took out a second mortgage just to cover my living expenses in Pittsburgh. I promised them I'd make good on their sacrifice. When graduation rolled around, I was carrying a ton of anxiety. There were student loans to think about, expectations to live up to, and a nagging voice in my head asking if I was really cut out for the tech world. Then Finch Secure offered me a job. It didn't pay as much as some of my classmates were getting, but I jumped on it. I needed stability more than anything. Those first few months were a blur. Orientation meetings, security briefings, and tiny bug fix tasks. I was trying so hard to prove myself. I stayed late, read technical documents on the weekends, and did everything I could to look like I knew what I was doing. One of the senior devs, a guy named Ethan, kind of took me under his wing. He was in his 40s, had 3 kids, and always looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. But the man knew those systems inside and out. So when the mobile banking project kicked off, it was Ethan who vouched for me to join the team. That was my first shot at something real, and I threw myself into it completely. I spent every hour I could spare working on that app, obsessing over every detail. Then, just 2 weeks before the launch, I stumbled on a massive authentication flaw in the login sequence during a routine security check. Fixing it the right way would have taken days. We'd basically need to rebuild the entire authentication module from the ground up, and there was no chance we could do that before the launch date. The client had already hyped it up with a full-blown marketing campaign, and any delays were off the table. I panicked. I didn't say a word to anyone. I just kept searching for a shortcut, some quick patch that didn't involve tearing everything apart. Nothing worked. The deadline kept creeping closer. Ethan kept asking how things were going, and I just kept smiling and saying everything was under control, while quietly losing my mind. Then one night, around 2 a.m., as I sat there staring at my screen, the idea hit me. I could build a hidden maintenance portal, basically a secret entrance that would let me skip the usual authentication if I ever needed to make emergency fixes after launch. It wasn't pretty, and it definitely wasn't secure, but it'd buy me enough time to fix the authentication properly in the next update. No delays, no alarms. So I wrote the code, tucked it away in a part of the system where no one reviewing the code would spot it, and told myself it was temporary. Just a quick fix. A digital band-aid I'd peel off once the real work was done. Then launch day arrived. There were a few hiccups, but none of them had anything to do with that vulnerability I'd found. The client was thrilled. My team was relieved. And I got promoted to senior developer, with a bonus to boot. I used half the money to knock down some of my student loans and sent the other half to my folks. They called me in tears, saying they'd never been prouder. I told myself I'd remove the backdoor soon, and I really meant to. But then more projects rolled in, the mobile app kept running fine, and before I knew it, I just left it there. Days turned into weeks, then months. I didn't even think about it anymore. Until one day, 6 months after launch, the app started having trouble processing transactions. The usual debugging tools weren't helping, and the client was starting to lose patience. That's when I remembered the backdoor. I slipped in through the side entrance, fixed the bug in minutes, and slipped back out. No alerts, no red flags, no one the wiser. And I felt brilliant. After that, it kind of became my signature move. At every job, I quietly leave myself a way in. I told myself it was just smart planning, being ready in case something went wrong. But deep down, I think I just liked having that kind of power. Knowing I had a secret way into systems no one else could touch. It gave me a kind of high, made me feel like I mattered more than the folks around me. I couldn't quite put it into words, but there was this sense that I was ahead of the pack somehow. As I moved from company to company, always stepping into roles with more prestige and more weight on my shoulders, that little habit came with me. Each place, I'd slip in my secret entry points, my own personal safety nets. They let me swoop in and fix problems faster than anyone else could, which only made me look like some kind of coding wizard. 5 years in, I landed a position at Meridian Financial. That was the big leagues. The name alone carried weight, and the paycheck was like nothing I'd seen before. They managed over $25 billion in assets for wealthy clients, and their security systems made every company I'd worked for before look like they were stuck in the 90s, like someone had left Windows 95 running with the password set to password. Getting in wasn't easy. The interview process was brutal, 6 rounds in total. They ran a full background check on me and made me sit through a 4-hour technical assessment. But somehow, I aced it all. They brought me on as part of the team working on their wealth management platform. My new boss, Logan, was the CTO, former Google guy. Quiet, sharp, with eyes that made you feel like he was reading more than just your resume. At Meridian, security wasn't just a checkbox, they lived and breathed it. Code reviews were detailed to the point of obsession. They ran aggressive penetration tests and logged audit trails for everything. Still, old habits don't die easy. Within the first month, I'd already tucked in my usual backdoor, hid it deep in the code where even their top-notch reviews wouldn't catch it. That first time I used it, I felt the familiar jolt, that thrill of being one step ahead. But this time, it was mixed with something new. Guilt. Because for the first time, I was working at a place that genuinely took security seriously, that trusted me. I shoved that feeling aside, telling myself I was just being practical, that it was a tool to help me do my job more efficiently. For nearly a year, everything ran smooth. I used that backdoor sparingly, only when I had no other choice. It saved me days of work on things that could have dragged on forever through the official channels. I made sure to cover my tracks, making it seem like I followed protocol every step of the way. My stock at Meridian just kept rising. Logan respected me. Even the CEO, a guy named Graham who'd built the company from the ground up, started giving me more trust, more responsibilities. I got bigger projects, heftier bonuses, and more praise than I'd ever expected. And after a while, I started to believe I'd earned every bit of it, that I really was as good as they said. But then came the night that flipped my whole world upside down. It was a Thursday. I remember because we'd gone out for drinks after wrapping up a major product launch. Just a few beers, nothing wild. I got home a little after midnight, crawled into bed still a bit buzzed, and was drifting off when my phone started going absolutely nuts. Texts, calls, emails, all piling in at once. Half asleep, I grabbed my phone and squinted at the screen. Emergency alerts from Meridian security system. My stomach dropped. Unauthorized access. Multiple security layers breached. Customer data compromised. I threw on the same clothes I'd worn to the bar and drove straight to the office, heart pounding the whole way. My mind raced through what ifs, but none of the possibilities were good. When I pulled into the garage around 2 a.m., the place was already packed. I spotted Graham's Tesla, along with a bunch of cars I didn't recognize. The elevator ride up felt endless. I kept running through what I might say explanations, defenses, excuses. But somewhere deep down, I already knew. I knew exactly what had gone wrong. The conference room looked like something out of a crisis movie, executives in wrinkled suits, security folks hunched over laptops, employees looking dazed, and in the back corner, two people who practically screamed federal agents just by standing there. Graham was red-faced, yelling into his phone. Logan stood at the head of the table, his expression cold and unreadable. As I stepped into the room, all eyes landed on me. Logan motioned me over to the main terminal, where a chunk of code was pulled up on the screen. My heart dropped again. It was mine. That backdoor I'd quietly built months ago. The so-called maintenance portal. We've been breached, Logan said, his voice calm but hard. Someone got into our system through this piece of code. Do you recognize it? The whole room went dead quiet. Everyone stared at me, waiting. I just looked at the screen, silently begging for some other answer, some way for this to all be a huge misunderstanding. But it wasn't. There was no denying it. That was my code. Yes, I said quietly. It's mine. The room exploded. Voices all talking at once, angry and confused. Graham slammed down his phone and stormed over, his face twisted in fury. You did this? He shouted. You put this in our system? I tried to explain, said it wasn't meant for anything malicious, that it was only there for maintenance. But even to my own ears, it sounded weak. Like some excuse a teenager gives after crashing the family car. Logan raised a hand, and the room fell silent again. I need details, Nico. All of them, Logan said, his voice tight. When did you put this in? What exactly does it do? And who else might have known about it? Before I could answer, one of the federal agents stepped forward, a sharp-looking woman in her 40s with eyes like cold steel. She didn't miss a thing. I'm Special Agent Brenner, she said, flashing her credentials. Financial Crimes Task Force. She paused for a second, like she was giving me a last chance to brace myself. Before you start answering those questions, you should know this. Over $43 million has been moved out of customer accounts in the last 3 hours. And we've traced the point of access directly to this backdoor. My knees nearly gave out. 43 million. This wasn't just some routine exploit. This wasn't even a major breach. This was full-blown grand-scale theft. Logan's face went white. How the hell did this happen? He muttered. How did someone even find that backdoor? I shook my head slowly. I don't know. I've always been careful. Agent Brenner didn't waste a second. Have you used similar backdoors in other systems? That question hit me like a brick. Suddenly, it all came rushing in, everything I'd done, every company I'd worked for, every shortcut I'd ever taken. It was like a massive wave crashing down. Yes, I said. Every job I've had in the last 5 years. You could feel the air get sucked out of the room. A collective gasp spread around the table. Logan closed his eyes for a moment, like the weight of it physically hurt. You need to list them all, Agent Brenner said, her voice sharp but calm. Every company, every system, every backdoor. Now, the next few hours passed in a fog. I sat there writing, diagramming, trying to recall every detail, every place I'd ever left a crack in the wall. Meanwhile, the room turned into something close to a command center. People were on the phone with security teams at banks, insurance firms, fintech startups, anyone I might have touched. Some of those places had already updated their systems, but plenty hadn't. My fingerprints were still on their servers. By sunrise, it was confirmed 3 other institutions had also been hit. Not quite as hard as Meridian, but hit all the same. Eventually, Agent Brenner pulled me aside. You're not under arrest yet, she said. But don't leave town. We'll need to schedule a formal interview. Then Logan walked me out himself. No security. Just him. He took my badge, my laptop, my access cards. His face was like stone. You understand, right? He said. You're fired. Effective immediately. And I'm going to the board with a recommendation to pursue criminal charges. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just nodded and walked out. I went back to my apartment, empty, quiet, colder than it had ever felt, and collapsed on the couch. I lay there for hours, waiting for the headlines, waiting for my name to pop up in bold font on the news, waiting for the handcuffs, the agents, the knock on the door. My career was gone. My future too. My freedom? That was still up in the air. I refreshed news sites nonstop. Nothing. Not a single article. Not even a whisper. For 3 straight days, there was silence. A tense, eerie kind of silence. Then my phone rang. Blocked number. We need to meet, said the voice on the line. It was Logan. I almost didn't recognize him. He sounded drained. Hollow. He gave me an address, a quiet little coffee shop miles away from Meridian's offices, and told me to come alone. I thought about ignoring it. Thought about running. But run where? Run to what? I had nowhere left to go. So I showered, shaved, got dressed, and went to face whatever was coming next. Logan was already there when I arrived, sitting in a back corner like he was trying to disappear. 2 laptops were open in front of him. A messy stack of papers off to one side. Half a cup of coffee sat untouched, gone cold. He looked like he hadn't slept since the night of the breach. I slid into the seat across from him. I waited for the anger, for the lecture. But that's not how it started. The good news, he said quietly, is that we managed to contain the breach at Meridian. We've already recovered about 60% of the stolen funds. I exhaled. Not much, but it was something. The bad news, he went on, is that we've identified 14 other systems with your backdoors. 2 of them are major banks. Another one's a trading platform. My gut twisted. 3 of those have already been hit, Logan said, rubbing his temples. Not as bad as us, but they're compromised. Someone found one of your doors, realized you reused the same methods, and started hunting. I wanted to vanish. Crawl under the table. Dissolve into the floor. I couldn't look him in the eye. Why? Logan asked. And this time, it wasn't cold. He looked genuinely hurt. Why risk all of this? I tried to explain. I told him how it had started out as a little shortcut, just something to help me work faster. How it became second nature. Then it turned into something else entirely. A need. An addiction, almost. He didn't interrupt. Just sat there, staring past me as I talked. When I was done, he shook his head slowly. You're not getting it, he said. I don't care about your motivations. I'm asking why, from a technical standpoint, you use such a basic, obvious implementation. That threw me off. Logan had been a developer before moving into the executive world, sure, but he wasn't a security expert. What do you mean, obvious? I asked. He turned one of the laptops toward me. Side by side on the screen were lines of my code, one from Meridian, the other from a system I'd worked on 2 years ago. See here? And here. Logan pointed at the screen, his finger tapping 2 blocks of code. Same basic structure. Same vulnerabilities. Just slight variations on the same trick. He wasn't wrong. It was all there in front of me, identical patterns, reused techniques, like I'd rubber-stamped my way across every company I'd ever worked for. Everywhere you went, he said, you left a signature. That's when it hit me hard. I'd reused the same backdoor methods over and over, just dressed them up a little each time. It wasn't even about convenience anymore. I'd gotten lazy, sloppy, and any halfway decent dev who found one could easily trace the rest. I felt sick. Logan closed the laptop with a heavy sigh. This isn't just about you anymore. Or even Meridian, he said. We're staring down the barrel of a full-blown financial crisis. If all these systems get hit at once. He slid a folder across the table toward me. I looked at it. What is this? The feds want to prosecute you, he said, not sugarcoating it. They're building their case as we speak. But I proposed something else. He went on to explain that a task force had been assembled, representatives from every company affected. They needed someone who understood the mess inside and out. Someone who could work fast, quiet, and clean up the damage before more of it leaked. That someone was me. The folder held a contract, consulting work, but under strict supervision. My job would be to help track down and eliminate every vulnerability I had ever planted, then reinforce those systems against future attacks. It's this, Logan said, or they press charges. And believe me, I'm already catching heat for even offering this option. So don't make me regret it. I didn't hesitate. I signed. The next 2 months were a blur of intense, draining work. I went system by system, sitting beside security teams I'd once unknowingly sabotaged, while federal agents watched over everything. Every backdoor I'd created was another scar I had to stitch shut with my own hands. It was humiliating, coming face to face with the people whose trust I'd broken. Some glared, some kept things professional, but I could feel it in the room every time. The anger, the betrayal, the disappointment. The hardest stop was back at my first job. Ethan was still there. He was the head of security now. The moment he saw me walk and flanked by agents, something shifted in his face, a mix of shock, fury, and heartbreak. You, he said. You're the one who did this? I nodded, unable to hold his gaze. He shook his head slowly. I vouch for you. I fought to get you that first project. Told everyone you were the real deal. I know, I said quietly. I'm sorry. He laughed once, bitter and cold. Sorry doesn't even scratch the surface. The bank lost millions. We almost collapsed. 3 branch managers lost their jobs. The CEO resigned. You didn't just mess up a system, Nico. You wrecked people's lives. And he was right. There was nothing I could say that would change that. But over the next several days, as we worked together, Ethan's anger didn't exactly fade, but it cooled into something more focused. He kept it professional. Stayed sharp. His priority was fixing what could still be fixed. One night, as we finished scrubbing the last piece of infected code, he finally asked me, why'd you do it? I was scared. I told him honestly. I found an authentication vulnerability 2 weeks before launch and didn't know how to fix it in time. I panicked. So I patched it in the worst way possible. Ethan stared at me for a long beat. Then he said something that stuck. You could have just told me. We would have figured it out together. Gone to the client if we had to. Delayed the launch. That's what a team does. And that realization, right there, was the hardest part of all of it. All this damage, all this chaos, it came from something as simple as fear. Fear of raising my hand and admitting I didn't know what to do. By the time the 2 months were up, we'd cleaned out every vulnerability I could remember planting. A few I'd completely forgotten about turned up too. But the most chilling discovery? 3 of my old backdoors had been accessed by someone else. It wasn't just the Meridian breach. Whoever had found that one had found others too. We still had no idea who they were. The final task force meeting took place in the same conference room where this all began. Every company had sent a rep. The federal agents were there too, watching closely. Agent Brenner stood to speak. Thanks to the cooperation of all involved, she began, we've managed to close every known vulnerability without any additional breaches. She paused, letting that settle over the room. Our investigation suggests that the attacks were carried out by a group operating out of Eastern Europe, though confirmation is still ongoing. Then she looked directly at me. As for prosecution, given the full cooperation, the restitution work, and the sheer scope of the effort involved, we are recommending no criminal charges at this time. That was the first time in months I let myself breathe. There were conditions, of course, a hefty fine, several years of monitored work, and limits on what kinds of systems I'd be allowed near. But I wasn't going to prison. That alone felt unreal. After the meeting, as everyone was filing out, Logan asked me to stay behind. You want to know the worst part of all this? He asked, folding his arms. I shook my head. We pulled the logs, he said. Every system that was breached. Ours included. You know what we found? He didn't soften the blow. None of the backdoors you created were necessary, Logan said flatly. Not a single one. Every issue you solved with them could have been handled through the proper channels. Yeah, it would have taken more time, more paperwork, more people involved. But the systems were built that way for a reason. And deep down, I already knew that. Hearing it out loud just made it hit harder. I convinced myself I was being efficient, clever, even helpful, like the rules didn't apply to me. Like I was the exception. I wasn't. I was just arrogant. Logan stood, about to leave, but stopped at the door. One last thing, he said. Next week, I'm launching a full security audit of every system at Meridian. I want you there. Me. I blinked. You're keeping me on? He almost smiled. I'm not stupid enough to fire the one person who knows exactly how developers think when they're trying to cheat the system. That was 2 months ago. Now, instead of planting backdoors, I spend my days hunting them, searching for the same patterns, the same shortcuts, the same mindset I used to have. It's humbling work. Quiet, necessary, and honestly, a little redemptive. Yesterday, I found my first one. A junior dev had built a hidden maintenance portal deep in the guts of a new credit processing tool. When I called him into a conference room to explain what I'd found, I watched his face cycle through every emotion I'd once worn myself: fear, denial, defensive justifications. I didn't yell, didn't threaten. Instead, I showed him the Meridian logs, the real-world consequences. I told him my story. By the end of the conversation, he was the one who suggested removing the backdoor. Some nights, I still wake up in a cold sweat, thinking about how many systems might still be running vulnerable code, doors left behind by developers like I used to be. I know we won't catch them all. There will always be people under pressure, chasing deadlines, thinking they're smarter than the safeguards. But at least now I'm fighting on the right side of that battle. It took almost losing everything, but I finally understand something I should have known from the beginning. There's no shortcut worth risking people's trust. No convenience that justifies compromising the security of systems used by millions of ordinary folks who never asked to be caught in the fallout. People trusted the systems I helped build. Families, businesses, charities, and I betrayed that trust. I haven't talked to my parents since it all went down. I want to, sometimes. I even pick up the phone and start dialing, but I always hang up before it rings. What would I even say? Hey, Mom. Hey, Dad. Remember how proud you were of me? Turns out your son nearly went to prison for building digital trapdoors into financial systems. My coworkers at Meridian still keep their distance. Most won't make eye contact in the hallway. I get it. I wouldn't trust me either. Not yet. Logan's the only one who treats me like I still belong there. Though, if I'm honest, it feels more like I'm a useful tool than a redeemed man in his eyes. Agent Brenner checks in once a month. She reviews my work, asks for updates. Our conversations are always professional, but sometimes I catch her watching me out of the corner of her eye, like she's trying to figure out if I'm genuinely trying to make things right, or if this is just another angle. That junior dev? The one whose backdoor I found? He stops by my desk now and then, asks me questions about security. He's cautious, curious. I think maybe he sees me as a warning of what not to become. And honestly, that's fair. Because if we're being real, I think most developers are just one bad decision away from becoming who I was. It's too easy to rationalize, to cut corners, especially when you're under pressure or chasing some impossible deadline. I'm not allowed to write production code anymore. My role is limited to reviews and audits. It means my hands-on skills are getting rusty. And yeah, I miss it. The creativity, the challenge of building something from scratch. But maybe that's the point. Maybe I can't be trusted with that kind of power anymore. The worst part? The money. Roughly 40% of what was stolen during the Meridian breach, over $17 million, is still unaccounted for. Gone. That's money that belonged to real people. Families who budgeted down to the penny. Small businesses hanging on by a thread. Nonprofits that needed every cent. That number haunts me. It's like a weight I carry every day. Like it's been tattooed onto my conscience. So, I started volunteering at a local coding boot camp. Teaching rookies about security, about responsibility, about how fragile the systems we build really are. I talk to them about real-world consequences, not just bugs or glitches, but livelihoods. Maybe it's penance. Maybe it's just me trying to balance the scales. But it feels right. Feels important. Last week, one of the students, a bright young woman, probably early 20s, asked me, "How often do you leave a backdoor in your code?" She asked it innocently. Just curiosity. I looked at her and saw a version of myself, before all this. Before I let my pride steer me off course. I gave her the same answer I give everyone now. Never again, I said. Never again. So yeah, this is the story of a developer who built backdoors into nearly every system he touched. One who thought he was clever enough to get away with it. One whose shortcuts helped open the door to a theft that shook entire companies and nearly ruined his life. But maybe, just maybe, this is also the story of someone learning how to make things right. Or maybe I'm a product of the industry itself, an industry that rewards speed over scrutiny, cleverness over caution. One that quietly encourages developers to cut corners, meet deadlines, and ask forgiveness later. I don't know. Maybe I am the villain in this story. But maybe I'm also just someone who got caught in a broken system that celebrates shortcuts until they explode. The truth? I'm probably both. Either way, I'm trying to make it right now. That's all I can do. My career's not bouncing back from this. My name's radioactive. My future? Honestly, it's still a big question mark. But at least I'm not making things worse. At least I'm no longer creating vulnerabilities that could tear lives apart. Sometimes, when I'm deep in a code review, I'll feel that old temptation, that itch to slip in a clever fix, something hidden, something elegant but wrong. my signature. And then I remember that night at Meridian. The cold fluorescent lights. The silence in the room. The way everyone looked at me, not with confusion, but with betrayal. And I remember the damage. The urge always passes. If there's one thing I've truly learned through all of this, it's that shortcuts might make your day easier, but they can destroy someone else's life. And no convenience is worth the price. Not for me. Not for anyone.